Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us this morning. We have Carl Hilliard, the Senior Director of Business Development at ABBYY, who's going to be showing us today the ABBYY FlexiCapture integration with Laserfiche. Before we dive into the integration demonstration, he'll do some background on ABBYY FlexiCapture, ABBYY the company, the offerings, and FlexiCapture, as well as how this integration can be positioned with Laserfiche. Thank you, Carl, for preparing the demonstration, and why don't you take it from here?
Okay, thanks so much indeed, Catherine. Well, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you happen to be. As Catherine said, my name is Carl Hilliard. I'm the Senior Director of Business Development here at ABBYY USA. So as far as what we're going to cover today, let me just make sure we're in the right thing. There we go. So as far as what we're going to cover today, we're going to talk a little bit about who are ABBYY. We'll keep the introductions to a minimum because I think the key here is, and what you obviously come to see, is the actual integration between ABBYY's FlexiCapture product and Laserfiche. We'll talk about ABBYY FlexiCapture. We'll talk about the connector and the architecture. And the point of that part of the presentation is to really put into context what in the demo and be able to understand what you're seeing in the demo. We'll actually go into a demonstration where I'll actually scan some documents into FlexiCapture, and we'll show the process of moving those documents into Laserfiche, and most importantly, moving those documents into Laserfiche along with the data that we extract via FlexiCapture. Following the demo, we'll talk about, well, okay, why is that important? What does that offer you if you're a Laserfiche partner? Or indeed, if you're any other organization, a customer, what does it really give you over and above what Laserfiche offers in its own right? And then we'll also talk about what's next. Obviously, this is an initial presentation, and this is not just a one-time thing where we have a relationship that was announced on the 12th of May. We'll talk about what we have planned, and then obviously we can open it up for questions as well. A little bit about me very quickly. I'm a 20-year veteran of the ECM BPM space. Prior to my role at ABBYY, I've had various roles at FileNet, Fujitsu, Kofax. So I've been involved in the ECM BPM space for many, many years. So, okay, so who is ABBYY? I mean, some of you may be familiar with us, some of you may not. We've been around for quite some time. We're even if you haven't heard of us, we're a pretty substantial organization with over 1,200 employees worldwide. And we really are a global leader in the space of document capture and language-based technologies. We invest very heavily in R&D with over 600 developers and scientists, and we have a very well-established partner network in our own right, operating in over 150 countries with 500 plus partners worldwide. Our goal as an organization is to help organizations create technology and solutions that really action information, that access the information that's buried within text in terms of language base, and also in terms of being able to lift out that information from documents as well. And that really allows organizations to optimize business processes, because the more information you have, the more sophisticated the rules that those processes can have. That mitigates risk, it accelerates decision-making, and ultimately drives revenue. So if you think about in terms of, when I talk about optimizing business processes and getting at that information, it's really designed to save time. And if you actually look, at the amount of time we spend doing things, back in over 2,000 years BC, it took 131,000 man-years over about, depending on which particular historians you believe, between 1 and 2 decades to build the Great Pyramid at Giza. And if you look a much more modern accomplishment, it was about 3,500 man-years just over a year to build the Empire State Building. In 1936, 25,000 man-years over 5 years to build the Hoover Dam, probably the last government project that came in on budget and ahead of schedule. And to put that into perspective, every single year, ABBYY saves 485,000 man-years every single year. So that's the equivalent of building, over 3 Great Pyramids every single year. That's the extent of the time saving that we deliver to our customers on a global basis. And in terms of, what does that look like physically in terms of the number of documents that we actually process? Well, if you were to take all the documents that we process every single year and actually lay them end to end, they would in fact stretch over 7 times the distance from the Earth to the Moon. That's 9.3 billion pages, which if you had added it end to end is about 1.7 million miles. Now, obviously, as those of you who are Laserfiche partners will be aware that Laserfiche does offer some capabilities in OCR with its QuickFields capability. So what does FlexiCapture offer over and above QuickFields? Well, there are a number of things. And obviously, both products are very feature-rich, and we don't have time to go into a detailed comparison. But to summarize, what we're talking about here is the fact that FlexiCapture gives you this ability to do automated classification. When you're processing the kinds of volumes of documents and across the plethora of customers that we have, it would be very difficult to have to manually classify every single document that comes in. You want to have intelligent data extraction. You don't want to have to create a rigid template for every possible document coming in. In addition to that, we also offer vertical and horizontal applications for markets such as healthcare, transportation and logistics, financial services, invoice processing, and mailroom. And lastly, scalability. Having the ability to process very large volumes, hundreds of thousands of pages a day, very large numbers of fields on a single document. So if I want to lift 50, 60 fields off a complex invoice, I can do that. We do that in our Stride. Dealing with hundreds and thousands of different document types. Again, having a very rich, complex environment. This is something that FlexiCapture really does excel at. And certainly, if you're looking and have an environment where you've got documents, many different types of documents where you're lifting many, many fields, and looking to have potentially leverage solutions around things like invoice processing, that's definitely when you would start to look at FlexiCapture providing that capability over and above what is available with the out-of-the-box Laserfiche offering. So if we look at the way that Laserfiche would process, say, an invoice, Laserfiche would need you to create a template. So you create the template for a specific invoice, you define regions on that invoice, and then you actually perform zonal OCR. So you're actually scanning individual parts of the OCRing an element of that document to lift out the information. ABBYY, on the other hand, will scan the whole document and OCR the whole document and automatically recognize where that data exists and extract that information and make it available for the applications that then subsequently use that data. And in this case, we're going to be passing that information on to Laserfiche. So if we actually look at the actual Laserfiche FlexiCapture connector, and this is a somewhat simplified diagram, but I think you'll get the point. We have on the left FlexiCapture, and on the right, obviously, Laserfiche. You'll see on the left-hand side we have different documents coming in, and they're indicated by the various different colors, red, green, and blue. And we're going to define destinations for those documents. So we've defined different folders for each different type of document. You see that on the corresponding side on Laserfiche, we have a red folder, a green folder, and a blue folder. But in addition to that, there is certain information that we want to extract. And those document classes have different data fields. And we're going to extract the data from those documents as they're scanned. So the document comes in, it's scanned, it's classified in terms of we know what type of document it is. We know, based upon the type of document it is, which data we want to pull out. We then recognize where that data is, and then as the document goes through, we file it in the appropriate folder and pass the data across to Laserfiche. Now, in addition to that, we may well have, in the case of an invoice processing application, an additional application that we might need to send information to. So, for example, in the demo I'm going to show today, we're going to pull up a number of fields. In fact, we'll start off by just pulling two fields, namely the invoice number and the invoice date, and we're going to pass that on to Laserfiche. Now, what I'm going to do in addition to that is I'm going to show you how I can modify that to now say, you know what, I also want to take the total of that invoice and pass that on to Laserfiche as well. I'm going to show you how we can reconfigure the connector to do that. But bear in mind, we are, with FlexiCapture, pulling out a lot more data than just that. So we may be pulling out line item information, in which case we're not necessarily going to pass all of that on to Laserfiche, but we could pass that on to, say, an ERP application, which is then going to subsequently use that data, along with a link to the document in Laserfiche so that the original can be reproduced from within another application. So as the document comes through, we can see the blue one goes into the blue folder, we extract the data, the green goes into the green, the red goes into the red. So let's move on now to the actual demo itself. And you can see that there are four main things that I'm going to show you today. The first is obviously the scanning of the document. Now, I don't have a scanner connected to my machine here, but what I am able to do is I'm going to simply import some images. It's going to recognize that these images constitute, in this particular instance, 3 actual invoices we're going to process. We're then going to process those images, and that means that we're going to go out and pull out all the information, recognize what type of document it is, determine it's an invoice, apply the invoice logic to it, pull that information out, and then we're going to go to verification. Now, in this particular instance, if the document is accurately recognized, that step actually is optional. You don't actually need to do that necessarily. Most of the time, you only would have verification where the confidence level is below a certain threshold, and it's using that particular event as an opportunity to train the system. So the more you scan, the more accurate it becomes, and we'll show you that as part of that process. Once the document has been verified, if indeed that optional step is taken, we then would export the document into Laserfiche. So we would actually put it where it needs to go, in this particular instance, a folder, and in this case, if the folder doesn't exist, we'll create one. In addition to that, we'll take the metadata and pass that into Laserfiche. So you'll see me open up the invoice. You'll see that, in fact, that the document has been indexed with the correct information, and now the document is available both within Laserfiche and, if we had chosen to, within other applications like an ERP application, if it had exported the data to those applications as well.
During this demo, I'm going to show you how easy it is to scan a document in FlexiCapture, extract information from that document, and then pass that information along with the scanned image into the Laserfiche repository. We're then going to make a modification by changing what information we pass to Laserfiche, and show you how easy that is to do with the XML configuration file. The first application we're going to run is the FlexiCapture scanning station. FlexiCapture allows you to spread various functions across multiple workstations and multiple people. Now, in this particular instance, we don't have a scanner attached to the workstation, so I'm going to simply import images from a directory, although the actual experience that the user sees is exactly the same. So we can see that if we go and click on Scan Pages, we're going to actually import a total of 7 images. Those images make up approximately 3 invoices. If we go and look at the first page of the first invoice, we can in fact see the information contained. Now, FlexiCapture is in fact going to extract a lot more information than we're actually going to use. This information very often will be integrated and passed to an ERP system, but for the purposes of this demonstration, we're only going to use 2 discrete fields. Those fields are the invoice number and the invoice date. Now, later on in the demo, I'm going to modify it to also include the total, which is in fact located on page 2, as you can see here. So now we're going to select Send to FlexiCapture, which is going to take this batch and send it to FlexiCapture for processing. Now you'll also note that the FlexiCapture batch number is 35. In fact, we called the batch here Laserfiche Demo 35. That's important because we're going to use that batch number later on as the folder name in Laserfiche where the documents are going to be placed. So we'll select Send to FlexiCapture and we'll see that the icons will actually change colour to show that they've actually been sent. And once all the documents have been sent, the batch is then removed from the interface. So if we now look at the various tasks going on, we can see that in fact in the background we've got a bunch of things actually happening. We're exporting the documents, and in fact if I click on refresh we'll see that we're pre-processing and recognizing the pages. Once this has been completed, we can then move on to the next stage of the process. Now obviously in this case I'm running everything on a single PC, so this will take a little bit longer. If we'd spread the load across the various workstations as would typically be the case in an enterprise deployment, then obviously this would take next to no time at all. So now those tasks are complete. If we open up the verification interface, we'll actually see, when we hit refresh, that there's a verification task that needs to be processed. So I'm going to open up that task, and we can see that sure enough there are the invoices that we saw earlier, and we can see each of the individual pages. If I go click on one of those, it'll actually open up an interface that shows us what information we've actually extracted. We can see that in fact we have the vendor information. You can see that each of these fields is being highlighted on the right hand side of the screen. The two fields that we're interested in for the purposes of this demo, specifically invoice number and indeed invoice date, we can see that in fact those are also being highlighted in yellow. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to change this process later on in the demonstration to include the total amount. And if I click on that, we can see that we automatically go to the right page on the second page of the invoice, which shows us the total at the bottom. Now in this particular instance, we've viewed all the documents, we've verified all the information, but in reality the confidence level was very high. We can see that in fact the confidence level here was 100% for all of the invoices. So in that particular case we probably wouldn't really need to do verification. So this task would only ever be done if there is some kind of discrepancy or the confidence level is below a certain threshold. So now we'll click on Close Task and move on to the next stage of the process, which is now taking the images and the extracted information and passing that across to Laserfiche. So if we hit Close Task now and we go back to our monitoring screen, we'll see that there'll actually be some additional things being done. So we can see that there's an exporting documents task that's currently underway. And in fact, if we go to the Laserfiche interface, we'll actually see that in fact we've already created the Laserfiche demo folder. And in that folder we can see that in fact there are the 3 invoices. And if I had to open up one of those, we'll in fact see not only the image but also the extracted information. So we can see, sure enough, there is the invoice number and the invoice date. Now also note that the total field is empty because we haven't configured the connector to take this information that's available in FlexiCapture and actually make it available in Laserfiche. So now we're going to make a modification to the connector, rerun exactly the same demo and see that the results in fact are indeed changed. So we'll come out of here, we'll minimize this interface, and we'll actually open up the connector. Or more specifically the configuration file for the connector, which is actually just simply an XML file. And we can see that in fact the most important part of the XML file is down here, and I'll actually highlight it, where we can see that there are 2 fields, actually 2 field pairs. The first refers to the invoice number. This is the field inside of FlexiCapture, and then the invoice number field down here is in fact the field name that we want to map it to. Now in this particular instance they're exactly the same, but they don't have to be. The second field that we're interested in is invoice date, and here is the name in FlexiCapture and here is the name inside of Laserfiche. Now I've already commented out the necessary fields that we need to add, so I'm going to uncomment out those fields, and in fact sure enough now we can see that we're using the total field in FlexiCapture and the total field in Laserfiche. So now we're going to simply save that configuration file, close that around, and now we're going to run the demo exactly the same as we did before. So again we open up the FlexiCapture scan station. We are going to scan the documents once more. And in this particular instance, the images are exactly the same, but it wouldn't matter if they were different images or indeed different layouts, because the system is smart enough to realize that those layouts are different. So now we're going to send to FlexiCapture. We'll go back to the task manager, and we can see that, in fact, if I refresh, we're going to see some additional tasks. So we're pre-processing the documents once more. And once those tasks are complete, we'll then go across to verification and verify that A, the information has been extracted again. Now, up to this point, nothing has changed as far as FlexiCapture is concerned. So sure enough, now we're recognizing the pages. And once that's been complete, we'll move across to the verification interface. So if we go to verification, we click on refresh. Sure enough, there is a task. We'll open it up again, and as before, like I said, we haven't changed FlexiCapture in any way. The only thing that's changed is the connector, and the connector doesn't come into play until we've actually processed this particular batch. So I'm now going to close the task, and that's now going to invoke the connector, which is in turn going to kick off the creation of a field, a folder, and in fact it's already done that. So we can see Laserfiche demo 36 has been created. If we open that up, we can see, sure enough, there are the fields, the images rather. And if I now open up the invoice, we're going to see something very interesting. We're going to see the fact that yes, we have the invoice number, yes, we have the invoice date, but now we also have the value which was on the second page, which is the total of the invoice. So what we've demonstrated here is the ability for the connector to rapidly make a change to the information that we're pulling from FlexiCapture to Laserfiche. And what's important here is we haven't had to do anything different in Laserfiche. We haven't had to do anything different in FlexiCapture. The documents classes are set up exactly the same. The capturing is set up exactly the same. But what the connector provides is a linkage between those two, and a very flexible linkage, which allows us to make changes very quickly, both in terms of making changes to a system that's already in production, but most importantly, rapidly getting a system up into production by making it very easy to link both the capture and the content repository that Laserfiche represents.
Okay, so all this is all well and good. So what's in it for you? First and foremost, for those of you that are Laserfiche partners, and I would imagine the vast majority of you are not ABBYY certified partners, that's all well and good. This obviously adds significantly to the capabilities of the overall solutions that you can actually deliver. Now, some of you may choose to become ABBYY partners, and we're more than happy to talk to you with regards to that. And there are obviously some very good benefits associated with doing that. However, if you choose not to be an ABBYY partner, or indeed have an opportunity which is ready to go, but you don't have time to go through that process, we certainly offer Laserfiche partners a 15% finder's fee as relates to any opportunity that you bring to us, and we will work with you either directly or in cases where necessary, we'll actually arrange for an ABBYY partner to work with you on that account if you choose that's the way that you want to go. The key thing here is that this allows you to increase your customer footprint, either in an initial engagement or, importantly, if you have existing customers who have needs that QuickFields isn't able to meet. But this doesn't do. We don't have to do anything to the Laserfiche environment. We don't have to do anything, frankly, to the FlexiCapture environment. By simply installing the connector, we connect these two things together in a way that is seamless, is easy to manage, and provides the maximum transference of value from the documents you scan in FlexiCapture to the documents under management in Laserfiche. As I mentioned, you have the opportunity, should you choose to become an ABBYY certified partner. We don't have time necessarily to go through the entire process today. That's an entire presentation in its own right. But the bottom line is, as an ABBYY certified partner, we offer generous margins with incentives for partners who are high performers, a strong channel commitment. As I mentioned, we have over 500 partners worldwide. We're independent technology, so we're not trying to force feed you a BPM system or an ECM repository. What we do, and what we do very well, is the ability to extract this information from documents. And as I mentioned before, with over 600 R&D and developers, we have an outstanding commitment to continually striving to improve our product portfolio. And also, this has already started. I mean, even though this is the first real webinar targeting partners, we're actually actively engaged on a number of opportunities already, even though we only announced the integration back on May 12th. So what's next? Well, obviously what you're seeing right now is the first iteration of that connector. There are some things that obviously we're going to do to help partners around the creation of connector-specific collateral. So obviously this presentation is being recorded, and that obviously will be available. We're going to create additional collateral that's going to go into more details around the connector and also the value proposition, and help you understand when the connector makes sense. We're going to make further enhancements. Right now, you saw the connector being controlled by a configuration file. It's our intention to further enhance that user interaction to make it more UI-driven rather than having to go in and edit an XML file, make it more accessible through a user-friendly UI. In addition to that, this is only one element of the connector and the integration between Laserfiche and FlexiCapture. You saw us take documents into FlexiCapture, into Laserfiche, and do so in a manner that is around the capture of the documents. Well, what about documents that are already in Laserfiche? Can we derive more value from those? And the answer is that is our plan. Our plan is to create the next iteration of the connector will not only handle documents coming into LaserCapture, but actually be able to point the connector at documents already resident inside of Laserfiche. And then by effectively go in and suck up like a large vacuum cleaner, if you like, suck out all the data from those documents and re-index those documents in Laserfiche, further enhancing the value of the documents that are already resident inside of that. So in summary, what we're providing here is a seamless integration between FlexiCapture and Laserfiche. FlexiCapture, this is not a 1.0 product. This is a very well-established technology that's a world leader in its own right, and we're marrying that up with a leading provider in the ECM BPM space with Laserfiche, and we're not requiring you to customize either of those two products. All the customization is available and defined within the configuration file. So if you have existing customers that are using Laserfiche, they're also able to use the connector, obviously with the acquisition of the Laserfiche, with the FlexiCapture product. So it's applicable both to new and existing Laserfiche customers. It provides capabilities over and above what is available with QuickField, specifically around scalability, the intelligence in terms of automatically classifying and extracting information, the ability to extract very large amounts of information, so lots of fields, lots of very different complex forms. That is FlexiCapture's bread and butter. Okay, so with that, I'd like to open it up to questions, and I believe we have some already, so I'm just going to pull up the chat window here. Okay, so one of the questions is, what app use cases is ABBYY a better fit for than the usual suspect of competitors? Okay, so as I mentioned, there are a number of different use cases. One area that I mentioned and we saw in the demo that we're particularly strong is around invoice processing. So we have a specific solution that you can purchase over and above FlexiCapture, which creates and has in it a whole bunch of predefined templates, a predefined set of data, so you don't have to go through the rigmarole of creating each of the different data fields. A lot of that's all done for you, and certainly that's an area where we're particularly strong. Like I said, we have a number of different vertical solutions that we've built. I think the key thing here is that we have a very flexible, intelligent, and scalable solution. I mean, it says the usual suspect of competitors. I'm not sure necessarily who those competitors are, but the other thing to bear in mind is that many of our competitors that offer capture usually offer and require you to take something else, whether that is an ECM repository, whether that's a BPM system. We are completely independent. So we don't care what the capture repository is. We don't care what the BPM repository is. So and in this particular instance, we've written a connector very specifically for Laserfiche. If you went to one of our other competitors, they will probably try and sell you something else other than Laserfiche. We don't operate that way. We know what we're good at, and we're very, very focused on it. We have, I'd be very surprised if there are any organizations out there that have 600 R&D and development personnel focused very specifically on this area of capture and being able to capture information from using natural language processing and OCR and all the other ancillary technologies associated with that. So that's how I would differentiate. Okay, so one of the other questions is around managing ABBYY licenses with Laserfiche licenses. Obviously, not every license is going to be exactly the same because, you're going to have users of Laserfiche, and those aren't necessarily going to be the same users of ABBYY. We license in a variety of mechanisms, but probably the most common is the number of pages that you're actually going to scan. And therefore, the management of those licenses will be different. Now, one thing to bear in mind here is that the actual connector itself does not have a cost. Our view is that the connector is providing the integration between ABBYY and Laserfiche. ABBYY as an organization is going to make money on the license for FlexiCapture. Having the connector doesn't add anything to that equation. So if you're looking at it in terms of what you're providing to the customer, they're purchasing a Laserfiche license, and they will have a corresponding license associated with the FlexiCapture component. Whether they have the connector or not, that doesn't increase the cost. It's simply an add-on as far as the FlexiCapture part is the only additional piece that they would have to purchase. Are there any other questions? Catherine, do you have any others from the... And I'm quite happy. I'm happy if people want to contact me offline.
Earlier there was a question about the configuration utility, and I just want to highlight what you mentioned in your presentation, that this is sort of the initial release of the integration, and there's a roadmap for building out a config GUI interface for making changes. For example, adding that totals field that you demoed wouldn't have to happen in an XML file. It would happen in a GUI interface. And then there's also plans to send information and reprocess content in Laserfiche down the road. And that opens up Laserfiche to these other integrations that ABBYY's built out with enterprise applications like SAP and PeopleSoft. So, and that plays into the question also about sort of the advantages of using ABBYY as well. Is this commitment to the partnership that we've built here, the long-term investment and into this connector, as well as opening up these proven advanced capture solutions to the Laserfiche, platform, essentially, having that add-on functionality.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think as I mentioned, the configuration file, which I can put on the screen here, you can see. Obviously, it's just an XML file which you go in and modify, and obviously it's a fairly straightforward process as you saw. But as you correctly mentioned, our intention is to move away from the configuration file and to create something that's much more user-friendly. There are some advantages of having a configuration file in terms of being able to cut and paste things around, but certainly our intention is to move to a more UI, lower cost of ownership mechanism. I think the other thing to bear in mind, and I kind of touched on it a little bit, is that what we're doing here is not providing a cut-down capability of FlexiCapture and then bolting that on to Laserfiche. what you're having access to is the full might of the FlexiCapture product in terms of all the capabilities. And as time goes on, as we make further enhancements to FlexiCapture, so as all of the fruits of the labor of those 600 development personnel continue to enhance the Laserfiche product, the FlexiCapture product offering in terms of increasing the accuracy, increasing the speed, and the flexibility of the FlexiCapture product. Those benefits are going to be able to be directly realized in the assets that are subsequently stored into Laserfiche. So when we come out with Laserfiche 12 and the iterations after that, you're going to be able to directly leverage that capability via this connector. And I think that's an important point. And to your second point, Catherine, this is only one use case of Laserfiche integration. So the second use case that you referred to is the ability to point the connector not from FlexiCapture going into Laserfiche, but actually going from Laserfiche into FlexiCapture in such a way that we can go through and point at a folder or a set of documents and say, you know what, go process those just as if I was scanning them in instead of doing that. And in fact, in my demo, I point it at a directory and it gets those documents as if I'm getting them from a scanner. In this particular instance, I would point it at Laserfiche, grab that information, and then subsequently put back all the data I lifted out of those documents into the metadata stored in the Laserfiche database, therefore making those documents more valuable because now they've got more information that's been digitally extracted. So it's aiding in that digital transformation.
So did you want to the other questions or follow up individually offline? There's some more questions about licensing and pricing, but nothing specific to the actual integration here, it looks like.
Well, I think the conversation around pricing and so forth, I think what we'll probably do is create an FAQ document from the outstanding questions, and then in that document we can actually point people at more detailed assets that they can review that cover that material rather than trying to cover it, orally on the phone.
Well, I wanted to thank everyone, thank Carl for the demonstration, everyone for your time this morning to sit and watch the presentation. There is more information on our marketplace if you want to visit there for more information about the ABBYY FlexiCapture solution with Laserfiche. And you can always reach out to me, Catherine Ramos, at laserfiche.com, or Carl, his information is also on the marketplace page for more questions.
Yeah, one thing I just would add to that, Catherine, and as I've mentioned, we're already working a number of opportunities. If a Laserfiche partner has an opportunity and they want to discuss it with us, the best thing they can do is to contact me directly initially, and then we can make sure that we track that particular opportunity. The last thing we want is obviously to be involved in two different places on the same opportunity, particularly and obviously when we start looking at things like finder's fees, to make sure that if a deal closes that they're obviously going to reap that benefit. So if there is an opportunity that you have or think you may have, feel free to reach out to me directly, and I can make sure that we put you in touch with the right people and we can provide, where appropriate, the necessary support to you in the field to help obviously close any opportunities that you may have.
Well, great. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks very much, and thanks for your time.